cover a little bit about digital transformation. I promise not to bore you guys because most of you are already sold on the idea. That's why you're attending this session. But I'll quickly give you a landscape of the low code, no code platform, how things are going, quickly get into Dataverse for Teams, how it's different. I will try to show some demo on how to build apps, bots, and flows in the Dataverse for Teams. Then I'll quickly touch upon the topic of how Dataverse for Teams is different from the Dataverse, right? There are two SKUs, or I would say two product offerings there and how they are different. And then when do you think you should upgrade from Dataverse for Teams to Dataverse? And then, of course, if there are questions, I'll be happy to take them. All right. Let's move on. So just covering the agenda here, I've already covered this. We will talk about digital transformation, what is Dataverse for Teams, a little bit. I would say most of the time is going to be on demos, so you get to see how we build things on the Dataverse for Teams platform. We'll quickly cover what is Dataverse versus Dataverse for Teams, how it's different. And if you guys are not familiar, I'll be happy to answer some questions on when to upgrade or when to consider upgrade. And then, of course, if there are more questions around other topics in this area, then we'll be happy to take them as well. All right. As I said, I'll keep this this portion of digital transformation very short. If everyone has different terminologies, I have taken this quote from my book where I mentioned it in much more detail. But in simple terms, I want to put it that this is digital transformation is leveraging the power of technology or harnessing the entire power of new emerging technology on how to continuously improve your product experiences, service experiences, streamline operations, and also exceed customer expectations. At the same time, empower your employees to get more done through them without having to invest too much on training. And that's really the power of Power Platform, where the ramp up time is pretty small. There's no code involved, so no need to learn new coding languages and other things like that. So that's literally what you're going to see in the next few minutes. If you are new to Power Platform, you will see all the magic unravel soon. Uh, just touching a little bit on this topic here, why low code, no code is getting so much of traction. Just taking a quote from Jack Dorsey, everyone has an idea, right? But the real power of that is actually in attracting people to build something cool and how you can get people excited about it, right? And then another quote I want to kind of also cite here quickly is from another guru from the industry, Steve Jobs, who says, start small. You don't need to kind of uh, get overwhelmed with the problem on hand. Try to break it down into smaller items. Try to break it, like follow the first principles and look at how you can solve smaller things before jumping onto more complex thing. And that way you will be able to put a ding in the universe, which means solve big problems eventually, right? Low code, no code, as we've been talking about, is definitely the platform that enables, if you remember, I was emphasizing on the employee experience on how you can improve your talent within the organization. And this is why low code, no code actually shines through, where you can enable your existing employees, any citizen developer. And by the way, citizen developer is a term used for somebody whose day job is not to write professional code, but they are technically savvy or they are computer literate. They understand how to put together two slides into screens and use like Excel like formulas. And that's the bare minimum requirement or qualification to become a citizen developer. Of course, you need to know how to use the apps and build those things, which I will be probably covering in the next few minutes here. Just to give some more statistics, by 2025, 70% of new applications built in enterprises are going to be using low code, no code technologies. You can imagine the amount of demand that's going to be there. And of course, you must have seen another article from Gartner itself that said we are already, like in the United States, at least I know there's a shortfall of real good developers who can build things quickly and faster. And then the digital transformation um, needs to happen at a much higher pace than what is needed. Of course, aggravated more by the situation we are in pandemic, where we saw organizations that did not have digital presence just perished. So I cannot emphasize more on why low code, no code is important for your journey on digital transformation. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Microsoft Power Platform. I know you guys are pretty familiar with it, but Quickly, I will just emphasize on the Dataverse portion of it. Of course, this whole suite is called as Microsoft Power Platform. It consists of Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, Power BI, and Power Portals. There is data connectors and AI Builder, which are forming the connecting glue of all, keeping all this together. And of course, there is the Microsoft Dataverse, which is the data platform that is powering all of these applications behind the scene. What's inside of Dataverse is not the topic for discussion on this particular session, but I'll just give you a quick glimpse into what is inside it. It's a polyglot storage, which helps you store relational tables. We have file storage. We also have key value pair storage for auditing and logging, which is like write once, read many times kind of data. And then, of course, the entire stack consists of metadata, logic tier, where you can add a lot of things like plugins and stuff like that. And then we have an integration tier also in Dataverse that helps you to connect data from different enterprise sources to bring them into Dataverse and then kind of unlock the power through Power Apps or Power Automate on top of that. And of course, the professional developers do not have to feel left out. There is an entire APIs suite and the SDK that we ship for Dataverse, which is also packaged in the data in the Power Platform. Uh, what happens now is in the last summer, we introduced what is called as Dataverse for Teams from Microsoft. The entire power of Power Platform is now put into Teams. So think about Teams as it's already become more powerful with the remote work situation that we are all in. Add Power Platform to it, you have a deadly combination here. So what we are able to do that with Dataverse for Teams now is we can build applications, bots, flows in Teams, and then also use within Teams so that Teams canvas just becomes much more powerful and you do not have to leave the boundary of Teams application to do anything. That's the promise that is being delivered here as part of integration that has happened here. All right, I'll take a pause before jumping to the demo. Any questions here so far? Okay, if not, I'll just unshare for a minute before I switch screens. As I want to make sure I'm still audible and everything's fine. Raz, can you hear me?
You are still audible. You
Awesome.
are still audible.
All right. Just one more confirmation on the screen that you can see here.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Cool. So what you see here is definitely the Teams canvas. If you are not familiar with this screen, I just wanted to quickly show you how you get there. Go to teams.microsoft.com. It opens up a screen like this. I'm signed into my test tenant, as you can see from the incognito window. Here is where you will actually go and look for Power Apps, and because this thing is there, and then here you will go and of course you will be pinning it. I already have it pinned. That's why it's asking me to unpin. Similarly, you can do it for Power Automate as well. On the Teams rail, you will always have it so that you don't have to keep looking for it every time you build it. Once you go there, what you see is definitely the home screen. I have a few apps that are already built, otherwise you won't see much things here. But then where you go, here's the build hub. That's where all the magic is going to happen. So I have some fake teams that I've created for the test purpose, like Superb Sales Team, just as an example here. We'll quickly look at this thing. And people who are familiar with Power Apps and make.powerapps.com, which is the Maker Studio or the Maker experience where you typically build applications, this screen will look very familiar to you because you've got the exact same experience landing here. Now, just for the demo purpose, we'll actually do like an expense or expense voucher or an expense submission process here, that an app which will allow end users to be able to submit a new expense report that goes to the manager, and then kind of he will approve or she will approve it. And then the kind of end-to-end process where the flow will trigger, and you will see how the app and the flow work in unison to deliver that experience. And then we'll, if time permits, I'll also kind of show how to build a chatbot, which is a virtual agent, to kind of answer some questions about the expenses that are going on. All right, let's quickly click it away by starting with the first table. Of course, when we have invoices, you can expect a simple spreadsheet, kind of a row where you would start saying, this is my item, this is what I bought it for, and here is the receipt. So let's start with a simple expense table here. There are multiple options here that you can take a look at later if you are interested in seeing what are the different options. There's a primary table here. I'm going to convert this into expense number just to make sure I'm able to identify this one pretty clearly. I'll save this. And this is the table creation experience inside of the Teams. I'm not leaving the Teams canvas. As you can see, your expense table is ready. And quickly, I'll jump there to see what other columns I have here. Of course, I will just look at the custom column. The primary name thing was the one that we looked at earlier. If you remember, it was created as a text. Just to show the power of the platform, I'll switch it to be an auto number, which means instead of having a plain looking boring text, I can make it more fancy with string prefixed or date prefix thing. Let's call it as exp. And you can see the seed value. I have an option to change it to something that is more a higher number like 10,000 or something. I've done that. I'll save it. I'll save the table. And pretty much you will see that it's now switched to auto number. Let's add a few more simple columns here to explain this. Amount. I will make this as a currency. And of course, there is values to sit min, max, and stuff like that. I'll just leave it as simple for now. The next one I want to do is the item description. I have, as you can see, the power of Dataverse for Teams that is there, the multiple data types that you can choose here. I'll just keep it text for simplicity to the so that we can complete the demo today in the short time we got. I've added two more columns. I can see, as you can see, these are bold, simply saying that these are not yet saved. That's this way of letting the user know it's still unsaved. And then I'll add one more for the receipt image. I can choose image. And pretty much you can see it supports up to 10 megabytes of storage per image. And I'll save the table finally here. And that's pretty much it. Your table is ready. And once the table is ready, you can see the magic starting to happen once we start building the application here. As soon as you are done with the table, I will quickly jump to your apps. I will create a new app. For simplicity, let's start with the tablet form factor. Let's call this as the expense tracker. And this is where the magic would happen. It's about 8:15 for me. In a minute's time, you're going to see how this app is ready for you to get started. The expense table was already there. I will just select that and you will see the app ready for me. It will already have have the options in the app for me to create a new record, add a new basically add a new record, edit a new record, or delete record. There you go. The app is ready in under a minute here, right? So that's the magic of obviously the Power Platform, and now it comes inside of the Teams as well for you. Quickly, just to kind of add few records, I will try to publish some expense item one. This is the primary key that kind of automatically generates. I can fix that later to remove it if I don't care about this. And then of course I have some snapshots of the receipts that I wanted to capture and then save it. As you can see, I'm able to create an expense submitting application in no time here as we were speaking here. I'll take a pause to see if there are questions while I just add a few more samples here for demonstrations purposes. Any questions? All right, let's keep going here. So This was how the application is built. Of course, I can go and change something if I want. The edit experience also works, as you can see. Um, and then once this is done, you have the entire Power Platform experience that you just saw it working end to end here. Now, going back to the build screen to say, once a new expense is submitted, I want to get alerted in some fashion so that a new expense is submitted. In that case, I will go and create a new Power Automate flow here. So of course, this is an automated flow, just like the way if you are familiar with creating these things in the Power Platform already. I'll say expense alert. And then here you're going to choose the Dataverse when a row is added, modified, or delete trigger. That, and then here you can see that it starts showing up here. So I'll add a simple one for create. You will choose the table on which you want to apply this, which is the expenses table that you created. Of course, there you will choose the organization as one of the scope. You can do it at the user or business unit level. And then here you can see the advanced options. You can choose a particular column only if you want to set the trigger on. Filter rows. This is basically where you can have OData like filters like uh, where if you're familiar with the OData syntax, you will see that you can say expense amount greater than equals 1,000. Send me an alert only basically when the amount is more than some $1,000 or £1,000 or something like that. Right, so that's pretty much what you have there. And then next thing is, okay, when the trigger fires, what do you want me to do? I just want to send myself an email. For the purpose of this demo, I'll send an email to myself so that I can quickly show you what it is. A new expense. This is where basically I'm showing the template of the email that will be triggered when this new expense is submitted. And as you can see, as soon as I'm here, I can see some of the um, dynamic values from the particular submission that I can bubble up into the email. This is where this is an alert for a new expense that was the amount mentioned is. I'm going to bring up the amount field and just show it here. Something like this, and then hit save for it. So every time you will have a new expense report being submitted, you can expect that you receive an email for that thing. Now, some bad requests going on. Let's make sure it's getting saved nicely. Now, in regular scenarios, what you would do is if you have a well-defined AAD structure, here you can actually get leverage some of the advanced features like get the manager of the user who is submitting it and send the email to that manager. Of course, I do not have all those details set up here, like who is the manager and everything in the AD, but those things are possible here that you can give the username from the person who is creating this one, get the manager, and then pass it to that the next step, which is the office user. It's email in there. Instead of the office user, you can actually have like a manager email also copied so the manager gets notified. So that's pretty much what it is here. I'll just keep it simple so that we can quickly show what the demo is going to look like here. We'll wait for it to be saved while jumping to another window to just show where we are in the app making process here. By the way, once the app is made, you can actually publish it, or you would actually publish it into the teams. Oh, all the data was lost. I forgot to save it. Let's create it again and save it this time. Remember, we already had the data, so I wouldn't probably be spending much time this time doing these things. Okay, there you go. I will save it. And then publish to the teams. Here is where the expense tracker is going to look like. I'm going to pin it to the team, the superb sales team that I had created. And there you go. I will add it as a separate tab, save and close. Meanwhile, let's see if this one is completed. Yes, it's completed. So let's go back and look at our teams. Maybe it's still saving. Yep. Okay, finally, it's done. Let's refresh this. There it is. Even before I refresh, it's showing up here. So there you have a expense tracker app sitting right in your teams so that any Teams user who is a member of this team can start submitting new record here. So let's say we are trying to submit a new item here. Of course, this is to test the flow that we created. Is it triggering or not? Let's do that quickly. And also in parallel, let's wait for the email that's coming. You can see there is an email that's already come for the two things which we already had created. I have two flows, by the way, because of which this got fired twice, but pretty much this is the email that we were talking about, the one that we created right now. So as you can see, we created an app, we wired up an alert, and there we have the new email coming as well. Questions so far? If not, I'll move on to quickly show the chatbot story as well. Okay. Looks like everyone's followed everything. It's so simple, I told you. All right. Let's go back to the Build Hub and see what we have here in the Power Apps, how to create a chatbot for a similar scenario here. And in this scenario now, we are going to look at creating a new chatbot, which will be something like this. And if you remember, or if you don't know, the chatbot consists of multiple topics. The topic is a topic is actually a building block of Power Virtual Agent or a chatbot. And as you can see in the background here, there are topics in the background that you will create. With Power Virtual Agent, you already get a lot of topics pre-created for you, like the regular conversations, like, by the way, if you just type hi, what is the standard greeting and stuff like that will automatically come back to you because it's already created for you. And that's the beauty of it. Right next to where you're building these things, you can test it side by side, and there are topics that are pre-created for you. Of course, for the purposes of this particular thing that we are building here, we may need to kind of start with a new topic here. Uh, let's just look at what's going on here. Something's gone wrong. I should have seen the new topic. I should have been able to create a new topic, but let's refresh this to make sure it's working. There's a question, do the bots built in Teams can be extended using bot framework? It depends on what you're trying to extend. Of course, all of the platform is extensible. You can customize it. The bot framework in itself, probably you're referring to the Azure side of the things. I do not know much about what kind of extensibility you're looking for, but most of the things that you want to build is already kind of there in the platform. But if you want to connect the bot to something else and make another bot, call another bot or something like that, that's possible. I would like to know more about those scenarios. If you have, feel free to ask these questions at the end here, and I'll be happy to answer. All right, let's go back to our chatbots that we were looking at. So the expense tracker was the one we were looking at. Okay, there you go now. All the modules loaded. So I'll create a new topic. Let's just say I'm creating the topic is to say get expenses or something. And the trigger phrase is expense. You can add as many trigger phrases as you want here. And then once it's done, you will save the topic and then go to the authoring canvas, which is where you will actually make the flow work end to end here. Of course, the trigger phase is already pre-populated. The next phase here is when somebody types, like just like the way you say hi here, the bot responds with all the topics that's already stitched together. If I say expense, it should kind of fire this trigger basically, but I didn't have any message populated, so it kind of didn't know what to do here. What I'm going to do is replace this instead with the flow action, which is the Power Automate flow that will go and calculate the number of expenses that are submitted and give me the response. So like imagine you're like a supervisor on the customer service call, like a call center, and you want to kind of quickly see the amount of calls that I've received today. So all you have to do is open the bot and just type a number of calls or something like that, and you will see the response coming back because the flow will do the calculation and pass on the message back to the bot. So we'll just quickly see how to do that. I have some flows already created, but I will create a new flow here. And here you will see that I will use the Power Virtual Agent flow template to get the data back from the Dataverse side of things and then put it back here. So quickly, I will add an action here to get the Dataverse side of the story. And then here I'm going to say list rows. Basically, what I'm trying to say is get me the list of expenses that are submitted, the number of expenses that are submitted. And that expenses is in the expenses table. I got already the number of expenses. I will not want to do anything fancy with it. I'll just quickly add a return here. And here I will add a number, a variable to pass the value of number of expenses back to the chatbot, which will be number of expenses. And this value is interesting here because what I'm going to do is simply calculate the length of the values that got returned, which is basically the value, which is output. You can see I just chose the value, which is the list of items, and I'm calculating the length of that. And that's pretty much what I'm going to return back to the bot here. And I'll save this. And this output, you will see the number of expenses variable that I'm storing in is available to me in the. Of course, I get a warning, but that's fine. I'll just ignore for the time being and move on. It's going to This variable is going to be available for me on the bot authoring canvas as well, where I can leverage this to give the answer back to to the person who is invoking the bot. So of course I did not give a name, but this was the, if you remember, this was the name that was used. Let's just give it a name so that you are able to understand this better. Actually, this is going to return number of expenses. Now, if you remember the OData filter, that's where you can actually filter it further to say, show me only the reports. So for the ones that are approved. So if you want to make the app more advanced, then you can actually have a status like approved, submitted, and all that, and then apply more OData filters to just return the values for those ones. And once that's done, you will be able to bring it here and call that action from here again, as I was showing you earlier. So number of expenses submitted is what I'm going to call. And you can see there the expense count is already getting populated here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out from here. I will call the flow first and then start with the show a message and say number of expenses submitted is going to be this variable comes out to be available here, expense count. And that's pretty much it here. And I'll save this. All right, so the topic is saved. I will just make sure it's getting triggered and let's see what happens now. So number of expenses submitted is 3 and you saw the answer come back as 3. So that's like the end-to-end flow of how I've created an app. I've used an Power Automate to trigger the count, or like especially an email when a new expense is submitted, and then I've leveraged the Power Automate flow to also give me the count of expenses submitted, and through chatbot I'm able to kind of query for frequently asked questions. You can make this more fancy by adding branching and stuff like that. I I can actually go back and show you some of those things if time permits later, but that's pretty much I wanted to cover as an end-to-end demo here. Any questions here? And of course, once you build this and save it, you can actually publish it. When you publish it, you will be able to create a zip file that you can go and kind of also import it into any of the teams that you want to do it here.
Thank you very much, Sri Kumar. There is one question asking, can Power Automate be connected to Power Virtual Agents?
This is what I just did, right? Power Virtual Agent invoking Power Automate to bring back the data and show it back in Power Virtual Agent.
So there you go. And the next question is, where will the data be stored?
Uh, all the data like gets stored in the Power Platform environment. There are things like Power Apps, the app per se, without the data, the Power Automate flow definition, the Power Virtual Agent definition. All of those definitions stay within the environment context, which is obviously in the Azure blobs and stuff. But the data, core data, as well as some of the security model and some of the definitions can also reside inside of Dataverse itself. So it's the Dataverse instance, which is the tabular data thing that you saw. Plus, in this context, it's just the Dataverse for Teams where it is stored. All right,
And
I'll switch to my presentation. Yeah, keep going.
finally, George asked the question, I feel the biggest obstacle to use Dataverse for Teams are containers.
George, do you mind elaborating what you mean by containers?
Are there plans to make them easier to use? So, George, if you could provide a bit more information, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Sri Kumar. Feel free to continue. George has said containers is the app building experience for the apps.
Okay. I would need a little more information there, but the only thing container that I'm aware of is in the app itself. For the visibility of everyone else, at least the container that I'm speaking about, I just wanted to quickly show you what that means here. In the app itself, there are containers created, and containers actually are helpful if you look at it from the perspective of an app building experience perspective. The containers make sure that all the related controls are staying in one container, and the containers helps us to with the rendering experience, be it a mobile experience or the tablet experience. So I believe you're talking about these containers here. These containers are just pre-populated. It helps you to, for example, if I click the right container, it helps to make sure that this whole container is in one particular thing. You can keep all the controls connected here, and I can create another container to the bottom, and you can actually make two different containers here. When you start building complex applications, you will appreciate the value of having these containers. They automatically reorient based on the uh, form factor of the device and stuff that you're playing around with. So yes, if it is a little complicated, we will like to get feedback, and we'll be happy to help here on how to make this much more simpler.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's go back to our presentation here uh, and look at some of the other topics that I promised to cover here, which was what's different from Dataverse and Dataverse for Teams, right? Now, of course, this whole article is already published publicly on this link here. Just go look for Microsoft Docs Power Platform, compare between Dataverse versus Dataverse for Teams. Some of this is a nuance that I did not cover while building of the apps, but let me show you. The whole thing about when we were building these apps is we were using just the Office license here. If you look at the Office Admin Center, this Office user only had like an Office E3, Office 365 E3 license. If you want to build apps and Power Automate outside of the realm or canvas of Teams, you can do so. Like making experience is not behind a license, but once you publish it, the end user who uses these apps, if they are using it outside of the teams, those users are supposed to have a Power Apps Premium license. And that's one aspect of it which I wanted to cover. Now, as you can see, there is a clear product differentiation that we are trying to say that if you use within Teams with your Office embedded license, there are going to be certain limitations on how things work today and how much of the product value that you can get. Versus if you're paying the Power as premium, you get to use much more advanced features like premium connectors and other things where you can connect to other data sources outside of Dataverse as well and leverage those options. Of course, it doesn't stop you from building those applications in Power Apps and then pinning it into Teams so that the Teams users can use it. The experience is still there, but just that the licensing then comes into play that all users of your teams are supposed to have a Power Apps license as well to use them. And that's why I just covered this here, because you will see some of the features either are coming, like for example, the common data model is already coming. The common data model is that model whereby you already get schema populated for some of the standard entities that you would anyways need, or standard tables as we call them these days, already pre-populated into your Dataverse instances. For example, accounts, customer, leads, opportunity. These are all standard tables, and it has its own schema where what the column name should be, what the data type should be, already figured out for you. And that's the common data model that's soon coming to Dataverse for Teams as well. And of course, you do not have storage for managed data lake. You do not have support for non-relational logs. And one thing I'll quickly cover is there's no API access directly that you can build for professional developers, and no support for plugins as well on Dataverse for Team. The whole uh, aspect of security as well is very much confined to the boundaries of what teams allow you to build. And that's why you will see that there's very limited options, like you have users, guest, application, and owners. Basically, these are like a few roles that you will see in the team's boundary, and that's what we have to stick to in the Dataverse side of thing. Whereas if you transition over to the full Dataverse schema or the product, you will see much more options with granular security and other options that are out there. So you don't need any of these uh, options in the Dataverse for team scenario. That's why those scenarios are not captured or not provided out of box in the Dataverse for Teams instance here. Of course, there are a bunch of other integration scenarios or pro dev scenarios, like wiring up a webhook, wiring up a plugin as we looked at earlier, and then also some of the Azure Synapse link for Dataverse is also not there. I'm not saying that these features may not come in future, but as of today, these are not provided in the Dataverse for Teams version of the product today. One more thing is, okay, you have some limitations in the Dataverse for Teams. You will come across these as you look at some of the features that you already saw. So we like to call it as the 3 C's of the product. When you are bounded by capabilities, when you're bounded by the lack of control, or when you're bounded by lack of capacity, that's when you will think about upgrading from Dataverse for Teams to a full Dataverse here. And those 3 things are what I call covered. Like the first one is the capability that you saw in the previous slide. All the capabilities that you think you might need is one reason where you will consider upgrading. The other one is control, where you can have granular security, you can have role-based access, you can have multiple privileges down to the table and column and row level. Those things are much more possible with the full Dataverse scenario. Then there is ALM, application lifecycle management, and environment lifecycle management as well, where you can have multiple backups, restore, and everything for the environment taken. You can have your dev test environments where you build something, and then when it's ready, then kind of promote it to a production environment once it meets the quality bar. And then, of course, the capacity. We have some limitations on the Dataverse for Teams on how many environments you can create, and based on your number of licenses, we allow you to create more environments. And then storage is also, and as well as APIs are also kind of controlled. Of course, if you're having a production scale usage, which has millions and millions of APIs that are being called, then it's recommended that you have a full Dataverse behind it, because obviously you need other things as well beyond just capacity, like controlling, taking backups. The system already takes backups, even in case of Dataverse for Teams. But if you want to create named backups and named labels and restore points, then those kind of control features are also available on the Dataverse side of things. All right. With that, I will also kind of share that all of much more information is contained in my book here, Digital Transformation with Dataverse for Teams. Raz has already shared the discount code, so feel free to go ahead and take a look. There is already like a preview of chapter 1 on Amazon. If you go and look at some of the context that's already provided, or a preview of the book is already provided. So take a look and let me know here. I will take a pause and see if there are more questions. I think I'm done with the content part of it for now.
That's all for questions. There is a question actually by Anand asking, hi, would like to know, is it possible to bring attachments features into Power Virtual Agents? Also the capacity available?
I think definitely we will be bringing them. I cannot say when. Most Dataverse features, like the file attachments that will be used with Power Virtual Agent, will be stored in Dataverse, and Dataverse does have a very high limit on the size of the attachment. Uh, it's up to 10 MB, as you saw when I was doing the file image scenario that I was doing in the Dataverse for Teams. That continues to remain as the Dataverse limit as well for the file attachments. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. While I'm waiting for the next question, yes, if you look at the books index, you will see that you have the similar journey that I covered quickly. This one was like a crash course where I kind of quickly ran through some of the scenarios. There are advanced topics and things like governance, licensing, and other topics as well that's covered in the book if you're interested to give it a read. Miguel has a comment. Yeah, thanks. Okay, thank you, Miguel. Thanks for joining. All right, I'll hang around here for 5 or 10 more minutes, Raz. If there are questions, I'll be happy to answer on the chat. Or do you think you should wait here?
Thank you very much, Sir Kumar. Yes, we still have 15 minutes remaining in the session. I'm just would like to know, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of cover or address as part of people's awareness for Dataverse for Teams in particular? Is anything that you feel they should be aware of, or how to get started, for example? I know you've given a very good demonstration, a hands-on lab demonstration. So just to make sure that the people, the attendees, are getting full value from your availability today, we just wanted to know if there's anything else that you would like to mention to bring to their attention on their journey with the Dataverse for Teams.
Yeah, and I think, Raz, that was why these two slides that I covered after the demo are important. Like there are certain capabilities and control factors and capacity factors that Dataverse for Teams users need to be aware of. As a maker of the app, you should be aware of, because when you're making an app for different scenarios, you need to be aware about which what your end goal is, basically how much the app is going to be used, who are your users and stuff like that. So you may have to take all of this into consideration before deciding whether you want to build the app in Dataverse for Teams, or you would go with a Power Apps premium license and build it in a way that more users can use it outside of the teams as well. Again, as I said, license is not needed while building. License is actually needed when the end user is using the application. So you have to give it a thought about that scenario. And as we said, we may bring more features to make Dataverse for Teams much more richer, but there's always going to be a feature, a product differentiation between data, what is in Dataverse for Teams versus what is in the full Dataverse queue.
Yours is asking the question, will it be possible to share different apps within Dataverse for Teams to different security groups?
Yeah, so security group as a concept does not exist when it is in the context of teams. It's all going to be limited by the boundary of teams. You can only share the apps within the team. The only exception is with Power Virtual Agent, which has the concept of an organizational bot, which in that case, definitely you can share it with at the organization level. But again, the concept of security groups does not exist there. Of course, if you created the team itself from a security group like Office 365 security group, then it's just like a one-to-one mapping from one team equals one security group.
And Steve Lins is saying, this is exactly the direction we are planning to take. Thanks for the demo, helped me a lot.
Oh, great to hear that, Steve. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, so are there any other questions in relation to Dataverse for Teams? I know most of you today have been on a journey learning about the Dataverse, and today Srikumar has shown Dataverse for Teams. I guess one question that some people may have is, Srikumar, we've been covering a lot of the industry accelerators as part of today's sessions. So I guess a question could be, if they wanted to download and use the industry accelerator solutions as part of Dataverse for Teams as a metadata solution, what would be your recommendations in relation to doing something like that?
As of today, I will say that because you saw the common data model is not fully available in Dataverse for Teams, some of the schemas, some of the tables that the industry accelerators are using may not be supported on Dataverse for Teams. Industry accelerator team basically that's building these solutions is pretty much aware of it. If they find it viable to kind of make a solution that has to work in Teams, at that point, they will have to find a way to kind of ship that additional schema that needs to be part of Dataverse for Teams. And then at that point, you will be able to use it. It is exactly the Dataverse that is actually put into side of Dataverse for Teams as well. But there are certain limitations because of which the schema is not like the full-fledged schema that you see on the Dataverse side. When I say the schema, it's basically the support for tables, the solutions, and other solution application lifecycle management operations that you would need to do to support the end-to-end process here. But yes,
Yeah.
the plan is definitely to bring some of those accelerators to Dataverse for Teams as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting, actually. So the core common data tables, um, would you say that they are all supported? So obviously, apart from the system objects that you referred to in relation to solutions, the core data model table, base tables, they are all supported, right? in the
Yes.
Dataverse, in
Yes.
Dataverse
So
for Teams, correct?
supported as in like so you can see when you look at the newly created table, you only see custom tables here, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Like some of the standard common data model like sales, leads, and opportunities that are not kind of already packaged for you here, as you would see in your regular Power Apps environment, where you can go and see all the tables where the leads, opportunities, and everything is already kind of available. The whole schema is already there for you, right? Contact and stuff like that. So that's not pre-packaged because the whole point of Teams thing is you create your own custom table and start with that as an option.
Awesome. Yeah,
Similarly,
that's
there's a
yeah.
question from Dennis as well that I wanted to answer. Go ahead, Razia, if you have a question.
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you build a solution in Teams or Dataverse, can you export it to full Dataverse? The whole point here is if you have a solution, if you have your apps, bots, and other things, why would you want to export to a full Dataverse? Like build it in a place where you're constrained for leveraging the schema and then export it to full Dataverse seems like a reverse of what you would need, but yes, it should work in general. But what we recommend here is in this case, come and actually upgrade this instance into a full Dataverse, after which all of these apps that you build here and everything automatically gets upgraded to the full schema, after which the apps, you will start seeing it in here, like once you start doing the environment. Today, I don't see any of my superb sales team or anything like this here because they are not yet upgraded. Once you upgrade them, you'll be able to see them here. And that's possible through the admin experience. If you go to admin.powerapps.com, you will see the option to upgrade them as well over here. So after you upgrade, you will get all the apps and bots and Power Automate flows that you build. They will be available in there. From here, I don't think you will be able to export other than just export as a zip file, not as a solution basically, but as a zip file, and then you can import it into another team itself.
So Abhijit is asking the question, what is the best process to import data into Dataverse for Teams? Can we use ETL tools or only Power Automate?
Great question. I would like to show something here. There is a simple edit option here where you can actually do simple things like manually editing and updating. But there is also an option to import it through Power Query, where you could have like an Excel or some other data source through which you can bring the data in there. And then ETL to support, we need a full API support, which is not there yet. So that scenario is kind of a little bit limiting on this surface as of today. But you can definitely import your data through Power Query, which kind of is still powerful enough, but I don't think it will match the expectations of what you're looking for through ETL. So if you have data here, you actually can say get data, and then it'll open up the Power Query options like Excel book or JSON and this kind of SharePoint folder data flows and stuff like that, that can be used to. So if you're thinking of data ETL, if you're comparing with the data flow, you can say, yeah, you are getting that kind of similar power here.
So Abhijit is basically confirming SSIS is not supported for Dataverse for Teams. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay,
So
Edward.
you can
Yeah.
see here SSRS reports are also not supported.
Okay. Eduardo is asking, I always wanted to know why Dataverse for Teams is blocked to use inside of a web browser, but now it's clear it has a lot of difference between them. So thanks for clarifying that to the attendees, Sri Kumar. And Abhijit is also now understanding where Dataverse for Teams fits. So thank you for that once again.
Great, cool. Glad I could help here. So yes, it's intentionally blocked on the browser so that you feel the value to have the Power Apps premium license. At the same time, the whole point of giving this features in Teams was so that the Teams becomes much more powerful and richer. You don't have to leave the boundary of Teams. That's the value prop of putting Dataverse for Teams inside of Teams or the Power Platform inside of Teams.
Great stuff. Okay, well, I want to thank you once again, Sri Kumar. I know it's a very busy week for you, so thank you for taking your time out to be able to share this insight. Because it is very new for a lot of the community, and I'm sure a lot of the community, this is the beginning point for them to start playing with the Dataverse, and start really understanding its power. So thank you for sharing that today. And we all are excited with your book as well. So I know lots of people are interested in that book. We will. So I'll share the link to the book once again. And before we let you go, Sri Kumar, is there any final announcements or information you would like to share with us, the community today?
No, I think I covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. Feel free to reach out to me if you have more questions. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer questions as my schedule permits, but happy to help you if you have more questions here. I will just paste my link to my LinkedIn here as well if you're interested in connecting.
Thank you so much. So yeah, Srikumar will be sharing. He's kindly sharing his connection details on LinkedIn, so you can stay in touch. And being in touch with Srikumar, I'm sure is very helpful, considering he is an insider in Microsoft. So he will be able to give you very accurate, up to date information. So I want to thank you once again, Srikumar, for giving the insider information and insights. And we all look forward to your book. Thank you once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Raj. Thanks for the opportunity. Glad to connect with all of you. And thanks for the feedback as well that keeps pouring. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Awesome. So there we have him. So that was Sri Kumar today joining us. Okay. So now we're on to our next session.